Welcome to Community Cap. My name is Michael Graves, co-founder of 100 Blacks in Law Enforcement Who Care. And unfortunately, we today, Noel Leader, Julian Harper, and Father Lucas, they're all on assignment. So I have to carry the ball, not by myself today, because we have a family member today with us. We're honored to have the doctor extraordinaire, Professor Leonard Jeffries, here today. Welcome.
Thank you very much, Brother Michael. Certainly a pleasure for me to join you on Community Cop. And I'm glad you squelched that rumor that your partners had left you because they found out I was coming on the show.
No, they're all on assignment, and certainly I'm sure that wherever they're at, they have a laptop and they're watching this program.
All right.
And certainly to our audience, in 25 minutes, you will be able to call in and ask Dr. Jeffries anything that you might want to, something that we mentioned or something that's on your heart. Certainly, we hope that the questions are robust, challenging, and difficult, because we don't think that you can challenge Dr. J any more than he's been challenged all over the world. So we want to start off by asking Dr. J, since this is Malcolm X's 86th birthday, what does Malcolm X mean to you, Dr. Jeffries?
Well, Malcolm is the symbol. Malcolm X, Elijah Malik El-Shabazz, is the symbol of our resurrection and our rebirth and struggle. So he means a great deal to me and those associated with me, my wife, Dr. Jeffries, those who have partnered with me in the City College family, Professor James Small, and certainly my brother, Senior Master Sensei Marlon Jeffries, who is in a martial arts school, and all of them appreciate the significance of Malcolm X. My young nephews, his sons, Dr. Hassan Jeffries and attorney Assemblyman Hakeem Jeffries, they appreciate all that Malcolm represented. And so we'll talk about that today, and we'll be with his family and paying tribute to his work and his partner for life, the Dr. Betty Shabazz, who's buried in the grave site with him. We'll be there on Thursday. This is over 30-something years that we've gone every birthday to be there to give and pay respects. And when Betty passed, she joined him. So Malcolm means a great deal. If I talk to some of my partners like Gil Noble will say, Malcolm's changed my life in terms of his struggle and and what he and certainly the Black Studies movement that came in the late 60s. It was a combination of Malcolm struggling for our human rights on the world stage and King struggling for our particular rights in this nation and also our human rights. It was those two brothers who symbolizes struggle, a long-term fight, and willing to give their life. And that, with that combination, Black Studies was birthed.
Now, it's interesting you use the term rebirth. Ossie Davis described him as our manhood and our shining black prince. What do those words mean to you?
Everything. Everything. In other words, Malcolm's life needs to be studied. We don't need the things that we have going on now, where people are trying to find a little piece of this and a little piece of that to beat someone over the head or beat Malcolm's legacy over the head. They need to see the fullness of his life. Life is about change, transformation, and rebirth. Every cell in your body is going through change, transformation, rebirth. Every system that makes up those cells is going through change, transformation, rebirth. Every biological system that you're a part of, including the family system, is going through change, transformation, and rebirth. Every ecological system, every cosmic system. Malcolm symbolizes that more than anybody that I know. Change, transformation, and rebirth. And so we need to look at that. His socialization, his foundation, and his acculturation. That was a part of his nurturing. We need to study that. His biogenetics, meaning his family contribution, what his father contributed in terms of his gene pool and what his mother contributed. And together, the father and mother, the mother threw in 23 chromosomes, the father threw in 23, and those 26 synthesized to produce Malcolm. That has 46 chromosomes. And so Malcolm starts out in a single cell with 46 chromosomes, and then it goes through a process of change, transformation, and rebirth. And when you look at the various stages that he went through.
Now,
because we all go through that. That's why it's important. We all go through that.
Now, when you say his parents, it's very rarely discussed what his parents contributed to the development of Malcolm. What did they contribute?
Well, all parents contribute our biogenetic foundation.
Mm-hmm.
And fortunately, with the explosion of science, as we have seen over the last 30, 40, 50 years, everybody on the planet who calls himself human has an African biogenetic foundation. So Malcolm's mother contributed her collectivity from her gene pool that comes out of the Caribbean, Grenada and other places. And Malcolm's father contributed his gene pool. We are the product of a gene pool connectedness and fusion, and we need to appreciate that, because my grandfather is in me as well as my mother and father. I was born on my grandfather's birthday, January the 19th, so that was significant for my mother. Here is this, my father's being rebirthed again with this young baby born on his birthday. So the process of change, transformation, rebirth should be burnt into our psyche, because that's what we go through. Now the big question is, who controls the change? Who controls the transformation? Who controls the rebirth? And there are institutions that control it. There are organizations. There are processes that control it. So you have your biogenetics, what you've inherited from your mother and father. That is your African foundation. You have no control over that. But you are the synthesis of your mother's contribution and your father's contribution. That's nature. However, for you to take the potential that's in your nature and to develop it, other processes have to take place. That's nurture. So you have nature and nurture as your foundation. Your biogenetics, which you've inherited through your blood, and your psychosocial development, which is what you get through life that has been laid down for you, your living conditions, your family conditions, and that lays the foundation for your future. So when you study his life, and his nurture and his nature, and then to see the changes he went through. It's an enormous portrait of us as African peoples.
Now, his rebirth in the Nation of Islam, would that have any connection with perhaps the lessons of Garvey that he might have learned from his mother and father, who were Garveyites?
Certainly, as you look at his socialization and acculturation. Socialization is how you get your beliefs, your values, your role models, your patterns of behavior. Acculturation is how you are programmed to fit into society. And Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad was a genius at understanding that process based upon his life experiences. And so he carved out a special mission for himself, linking it to a divine consciousness that we have to have a self-development process of controlling our development so that the change and transformation and rebirth that we are going to be about in the future has our values, our interests, and our principles as a part of it. Most often, we don't even ask the question about values, interests, and principles. And so, what we have to. And so, certainly, the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad emerged on the scene when the Garvey movement was other nationalist movements out of Detroit and other places were being put together. And so, Garvey's father, the Garveyite tradition was a part of Malcolm's father's legacy. And his mother also had that. So he had a combination coming from mother and father of a consciousness. So he spent his life solving the dilemma that Dr. Wade Noble says is a part of all of our growing up. African people suffer greatly from shattered consciousness and fractured identity. And so Malcolm lived through that process. And so when we call him the period of his growing up as a young black youngster in a Garveyite family, trying to develop a consciousness of independence, self-determination, self-development, that was his foundation. And he has a strong biogenetic inheritance. His gene pool was strong. But the key question is, you can have a strong foundation, but if you don't have a strong formation, then that foundation will never bear the fruit it's supposed to. So we need to see and understand Malcolm's life in such a way that we have to put in place and make sure that the foundation is strong. And so we have to have Africans relating to Africans in a real way, and producing marriages and children. And then we have to put in place a societal development through our families and community so that the formation is strong. Not a formation coming through the movies, which was my generation, not a formation coming through the earphones and other things, and the TV. That's the later generations. We have to put in place as African peoples the formation of our leadership. It was going to be leadership to service us. So Malcolm's life is a perfect example of that. The foundation was strong, but then the formation was shattered. And that helped to shatter consciousness and disrupt his identity because his father was murdered and killed in Michigan, I believe, and eventually the legacy of struggling to raise her family pressured his mother into hospitalization and the rest of that. So he was without the twin pillars that we all need in a real way. And so in the African tradition, you don't leave the twin pillaredness, meaning mother and father, to one or two individuals. The whole family is in the African tradition. The African tradition is that you have multiple mothers and multiple fathers. So you have your biological mother and father, but they bring you into a family context that your mother's sisters are your mothers. Your mother's brothers are your fathers. And your father's sisters are your mothers. And your father's brothers are your fathers. So that's why, based upon that tradition, African peoples will not have the problems that come when you're just a labor union unit coming into the cities to find a job. So it's the family that's the key. We have to restructure this family to service us in the new world that's before us. And so we study Malcolm's family, its strengths, its weaknesses, its challenges, its the obstacles that they have to overcome, and then you study the change and transformation, and then you study the rebirth, because he certainly rebirthed us in the 60s, and we owe him greatly for that rebirth, along with Dr. Kwame Nkrumah, the president of Ghana, along with President Jomo Kenyatta, Kenya, along with W.E.B. Du Bois, along with Paul Robeson, along with all these greats, and along with all the sisters that contributed. And so, why am I talking this way? Because we have to control the images, control the self-esteem, the self-respect, and the self-development. If you don't have the most positive images, those images that can strengthen you as a part of your growing up and your consciousness low self-esteem or negative self-esteem, and you suffer from no respect or low respect or negative respect, and then that means that at the center of self-esteem, self-respect, and self-development, you don't have a true development. You have arrested development. And Malcolm's life speaks to that. He was on the fast track of development, but then his family collapsed. And then when he went through all these different institutional structures, he had to learn the game playing that you play with institutional structures. And then the values that are not the values that lift you up to a consciousness of the divine order of things. And so he got down to a low level of consciousness. And the beautiful thing is within him was the ability to go within. And in the inside community, in the prisons, he was able to tap into the strength from the family, the value system that had been put in him, although not manifested, and then with the knowledge of the Nation of Islam birthing process that the Osama Raj Muhammad put together of taking people from the that have been crushed down and raising them up into manhood and womanhood, into familyhood, into consciousness. And so Malcolm had what came from the family, what came from the Nation of Islam. He combined that and he busted out. And then he was on a sacred mission to help restore Africans to their fullness, to help restore African humanity, which is the same path of Harriet Tubman, Sojourner Truth. All of our greats have been on that path. And so he epitomizes the rapid, speedy track on that path. He was a 100-yard on that path from the 50s to the 60s. He only had a 10-year window to do it. And he lifted up the whole race, global race. When I studied the South African situation when I was with the World Council of Churches in Geneva in '83, when I went to translate the Arts book, Civilization and Barbarism, it was at that time that I also studied the struggle in South Africa. And that's when you found out that grassroots Black consciousness movement that Steve Biko symbolizes was inspired by Malcolm X and others in the 60s in America. And that they knew that you had to control the consciousness to produce a strong individual, male and female, to function in this global clash of ideas and powers and forces. And so I link in America the struggle to raise our consciousness around Malcolm X to the struggle that took place 10 years later in '76 in the Black Consciousness Movement around Steve Biko. And both of them gave their lives in struggle. The blood of the lamb shed by those young children had more to do with what became the freedom movement in South Africa than Nelson Mandela breaking rocks in Robben Island.
Now, you mentioned the great Asadifu, Dr. Kwame Nkrumah. When you hear that name, what does it mean to you? And what is his contribution? A man who said that the independence of Ghana is meaningless without the independence of all of Africa.
All of these great individuals, when I hear their name, it sends chills through me. Because I know this is the path that I have to go on. And at the end of that path might mean your destruction. And it's a question of freedom or death. It's a question of liberation by any means necessary. And so all of these individuals represent that. They represent change, transformation, and rebirth on the African side. You can have change, transformation, and rebirth on the European side, or you can have change, transformation, and rebirth on I don't know what side I'm on, so I'm just as confused as I can be. All of these individuals that we are mentioning went through this process of a strong family foundation, and then a desire to do something for the race, seeing the condition of our people, and then putting a plan together and developing a sacred mission, then reaching within, tapping the God within to produce godness without. And that's what Nkrumah did. And Nkrumah wanted to be a pastor. His early beliefs was I wanted to, because that's where you could get the best education, through the ministry. That's what portrays the movement. The symbol, the Malcolm X of the Congo. That's what he wanted to be. All of these people, and that's beautiful, because all of these people, seeing the importance of religion, finally realized that the religion that they thought they was going to follow that white Christianity is not the religion that's going to bring liberation to their people. So they combine a divine mission, which the religious path leads you to, and a divine leadership that you're going to manifest. But then when they see the path is Africanness, and that leads you to a combination of the divine with the realness of the African, that we are the human family. And our story is a story that has to be told. And it's in your story and your glory that you can be what you need to be, and not in his story and his big lie.
At this point, I have to ask you about your foundation because I've never seen an educator withstand the attack that you've had to withstand over the last 30 years. And they never discuss the content of your words. They attack you nevertheless. And you bring the truth as you brought today, as you always bring. You bring the truth with you where you can argue on the level of ideas. But what gave you the foundation to stand the way you stood so strongly over the years?
Well, as I mentioned several times on my TV partner, Gil Noble's show, and on my radio partner, Imhotep Everybody's show, and even on my sister Camille Yarborough's Manhattan Cable Fox show.
Right.
The key to understanding all of us is the woman, is the mother, is the nurturer, is the one that instills values, is the one that calls together the men to make sure that the family is properly structured and properly maintained. The key to it is the female in our lives. And so until we understand and appreciate that, there's nothing monumental that we can build. There's nothing of greatness that we can build that will last. It is the foundation around the female principle. The male complementary with the female principle, but the centrality of the female principle. We all come out of some good African woman's womb. And it is through the memory glands of a great African woman that we were nurtured. It is on the lap of a great African woman that our values were instilled in that first period of 0 to 5 when the formation outside of the womb is taking place. And great African women never do anything by themselves. They do it with other African women, they do it with other African men, they do it with their grandfathers and their uncles, they do it with their ancestors. And that's the key. The greatness that I may have manifest in whatever level it has is because of the female factor in my life that laid a path of greatness in my family and sustained it. Even with the destruction and the depressions and the racism and my grandfather was lynched in Georgia, even though he was a great man, and because of his greatness he was lynched. But before he was lynched, he had 13 kids. His brother had 15 kids. They had their farms next to it. He was the head of the Masonic Lodge. The schoolhouses, the churches that they built are still there in Georgia. So before they took him out, strength had already been passed down to his daughters and to his sons. And so I've inherited that on both sides of the family. Coming up from Virginia, it's strength on my mother's side. Coming up from Georgia, it's strength on my father's side. Specifically to his sisters, like Aunt Betsy, who raised him when the mother died. Aunt Betsy raised him as her own. And she lived on 12th Street in North New Jersey. My mother's family lived on 13th Street, and my brother and I lived with our parents on 14th Street. That was the African village. Of the 100 kids I grew up with on 13th, 14th, and 12th Street, 90 of us made it big. It's not just the Jeffries who happened to come out of the crowd. All of us made it big because the village was there. The values were there, the institutions were there, the church was on the street corner. They organized summer camps and sent us to camp. If someone died, the parents died. Presley Wood's parents died, so the families took him in and raised Presley and his sister. Presley became a great public school teacher. Sammy Foster became the principal of Quitman Street School. Next to him was Dr. Robert Spellman. These are the people I grew up. Dr. Robert Spellman, who went to Africa in 64 and became a professor at Essex County College. Evan Percy Alba, who's in Brazil now, athlete during his time, became a great teacher. His sister Nancy has married an African from West Africa and is building with him. All of the children I grew up with got the same Africanists, and they're all doing the same thing, and their children is following them. That's it. I ain't no special nothing. Okay, it's a special formula. And that's what I want to be able to teach and preach. You've got to have, I am what I am because all of my family said, we're going to have a path to success. And my younger brother followed me. Okay, and my mother and the other said he's going to college just like the older one. And then eventually, my brother went into the service first. At that point, in his late teens, he had control of his. He wasn't ready for the college, but when he came back from service, he went on to college. I met my brother in 1959 when I mentioned this article that I wrote on my experience in Europe. I met my brother, a closer look at the world, in Germany. In 1959, he was at Darmstadt, I guess it was, the Air Force base there. But when he got out of the service, he went on to college, married a beautiful woman, Lynetta Rosie Gomes. They had these beautiful young men, and they put that same process that was put in us in their young men. And their young men became Dr. Hassan Jeffries, the younger, and attorney Hakeem Jeffries, a Assemblyman, the older. Now, they now have children, and they're putting that same strength in those children. You've got to have a program for success. Leadership may be born, but it has to be formed. And I'm the result of an African formation, and all the people that were around me and associated with me have had that same process.
I would be remiss if I didn't bring up at least one name, even though they are litany of names, and you could espouse on all of them. But I have to ask you, if I say the name of the great Dr. John Henry Clark.
Well, I'm ready to cry because I lost him, Dr. John Henry Clark. I lost my mother, Leola Smith Jeffries. I lost Edward Scobie and Dr. Shashi McIntyre, all within 2 years.
Yeah.
My major formation around me that gave me strength, that put me on check, that gave me accountability, I lost them all between 98 and 99. But they had given me so much and had created so much around me, like the Sons of Africa, Daughters of Africa, other associates, that we've still been able to carry on the struggle. And Dr. Clark was the mind of the African, the vision of the African, and he gave it to any of us that stayed with him and were part of his world. Generations of greatness. And he comes out of a sharecropper son situation in Georgia, Alabama, when you couldn't get an education. You had to fight for it. You couldn't go into a library. You had to fake going to the library. And then to make up for the library that he could not have as a child, he developed his own personal library of 10 to 20 to 30,000 books on 137th Street.
That's right.
He eventually gave to the collection, and some of it went to Columbus, Georgia, where he grew up. Some of it went to the greatest complex of black education is the Atlanta University complex, and his library is there. He gave some of it to the suburb. Here is someone unlettered, meaning he didn't go to Columbia, Yale, Harvard. He came out of the school of African hard knocks.
Right.
And what put the strength in him? He said 3 deities in his life. His grandmother, his mother, and his school teacher, Evelyn Taylor, put the mark on him and knew that he had this special consciousness, special understanding, and then carved a path out. So this genius was born among us, and then he comes through the South, makes his way to New York, and then eventually he partners with another genius who comes out of the same process, having a strong mother. He had a difficult grandmother, but that mother, that Puerto Rican mother, put strength in him. He carries that mother's picture with him, lo, these many 90 years. Dr. Yosef Ben Yakinen. It was that mother that made up for the difficulties with the grandmother who couldn't understand, couldn't appreciate this black youngster in her mulattoized Puerto Rican family. But that mother loved him to death. And with the father having the strength that he had coming from Ethiopia, he was able to, just like Barack Obama, take the strength of his father and combine it with what his mother had given him. And what his mother given him? Love. Love makes the world go round. You can't teach without love and respect. You can't raise children without love and respect. And so that's what Dr. Clark had. That's the foundation he built on. And he extended out to all of us, even those of us that weren't family. He made us family. And then another woman stepped in to save his legacy and to make sure he did not sink to the low levels at the end of his life. And Sister Sybil Williams Clark stood by him and allow him to leave us as an African genius and king he was, sitting on his throne up there in Esplanade Gardens and with silk sheets and with silk pajamas he could hold forth until he left us. And then he had the greatest funeral one could imagine at Abyssinia, right around the corner from this house. And then while he was doing his community work, because you consider yourself the community cop, even though that's strange. I consider myself the community professor. And why am I like that? Because Dr. Clark said no matter what degree you got from Columbia and from Yale, Harvard, what you do with that knowledge and putting it in the community is key to whether you are considered a success. So here you had this brother who didn't have degrees from these schools, teaching those of us who had them, who taught us how you got to take that scattered consciousness and come up with an African consciousness, how you had to take that fractured identity and make it a pan-African identity. And his word to me, and that's why I said, when you mentioned his name, it's tears. Pan-Africanism or perish. Pan-Africanism or perish is his life. And he did everything. He helped Malcolm when Malcolm needed it. He helped others when he needed it. All these great brothers. Dr. Ron Walters just died in Washington, D.C. The Black Caucus, everybody said this was the greatest young man. He was the mind of the Black Caucus. He was a walking think tank. He gave all his contribution to Waters and to Jesse and to all the others that needed his brilliance. He could analyze things. Well, our formation was with Dr. Clark, sitting at the feet of Dr. Clark. Dr. Clark had at his feet Dr. James Turner, who set up the Cornell Africana Studies, Dr. Jeffries, who set up the greatest Black Studies program in the history of the world at City College, Dr. Ronald Walters, who was setting his up in Brandeis, but then went down to Howard and made all of Howard an African think tank. The sister, Shashi McIntyre, she testified that Dr. Clark changed her life. Barbara Sizemore, inspired to be a great teacher because of Dr. Clark. And Lynn Dozier, my wife. So that's why I said when you understand the history of our people and how you link it together as a fit, we don't need no Washingtons, no Jeffersons, no Monroes. We don't need no Lincolns. We don't need no John Kennedys or Robert Kennedy. We just need to know our people who got a sense of mission and purpose and direction and who left it for us as an empowering legacy. And that's why we're on the victorious path right now.
Now, I only have one quick question before we go to the phones.
Why do you have to go to the phones? You know the enemy is out there. They're going to be calling up in here. So, all right. You have a screening mechanism?
We okay, but you can handle any call that comes through. I just want to ask you, speaking of Pan-Africanism, what do you think of President Muammar Gaddafi, who tried to form and finance this African Union? And I know you know more about it than most of us.
Well, let me show you this. Senegal, the African Renaissance Monument, which has a black man rising, holding onto his rock, a black woman, and in his left hand holding his child up to God. And that child is not pointing north to Europe. That child is not pointing east to Asia. That child is pointing not south to Africa, but pointing west to the Western world. It is the African in the West linked up with the Africans on the continent that will produce the African Renaissance. I was with Gaddafi and other leaders of Africa, 24 leaders of Africa, when they were inaugurating this statue. He recognized it as a great symbol of Africans from the different backgrounds coming together and rising up. So he had a pan-African, pan-Arab perspective and a contribution that he made. So Minister Farrakhan and others who know him personally speak of his great strength, his great generosity, and his willingness to try to be a deliverer. Meaning, if Africa needs a military command for all of Africa, then that's that's something we would facilitate. We needed a banking structure that would help Africans and not the Europeans, then he would help that and put that in place. And so he's getting a demonization process because they have to take him out of here. But like he said, don't make him do what you do to him. He's already done what he needs to do. It's in the people.
All right. First caller. Where you calling from? You on Community Cop? Question or comment?
Yeah, Harlem. Yeah, Harlem Hotel Military.
All right.
Hotel.
Yeah, Dr. Jeffries, I want to say, I love you. I'm excited to have you on. I totally understand what you mean about the call because there's music out there, but you got to understand too. You and Dr. Ben and Dr. Clark and even Michael Gray and Rock and everyone out there have given us so much power and knowledge, and we got your back. We got a full show of power around you. But I got a question. I'm not gonna get into my rant rate like I usually do about Obama and Bloomberg and all these politicians. What I want to ask you, I don't need hope. I need to know something. Can you give me maybe a timeline or a prediction? I know you may be asking, but I need some charge to know that these white folks and this destruction of this government and these governments will meet their match soon. Can you give me something, please? Something I can bite into, and I can go to sleep tonight. I love you, Dr. Jeffries. Hope that reinstate off the matters, and my love and my spirit goes out to Jeffries. And Michael Gray, you're the man. That's why you can't be a politician. You're too powerful.
Thank you, brother.
Yeah, there's much more than politics in life. You got to hope that economics, politics, and culture up, and then you have the dynamic of a system. But my message to everyone is you have to have a system. We're in a complex of systems, and you have to have a system to deal with the system. And that's what African peoples have failed to miss. We developed the consciousness and the understanding and the theories of systems. Systems comes out of our human science, our economic science, our sociological science. But we're waiting for somebody else to give us systems and plans. We need to have our own plan. And so, as the brother said, everybody wants to contact me, lots of brothers, and establish some dialogue. You can call me at the office at City College, 212-650-8651, and we'll be glad to continue this dialogue because we're on a victorious path. But we're in such a mirage and such a mess, and there's so many conflicting things happening. We can't see the rise of the 1945, I call it the Great Awakening, from 1940, the 50th turning point of history, from 1945 to 1995 and beyond. And so peoples of color, the African, the Southern Asian, the Native American, the Mesoamerican, are moving together, and there's an enormous process actually taking place. But the European and others who have their systems are not just going to fade away. They're going to try to rework their system. They're try to keep control. And the European, I always say the white man, and that creates a paralysis of analysis. The enemy, whatever color he may be, is outside and he's inside. Already the idea is to cause you to not to be what you should be already in you. So we need a whole process of development of the internal strength, development of the external strength. But I think Frederick Douglass left this brother what he needs. Frederick Douglass said that if there is no struggle, there is no progress. Those who possess the trade of freedom have dedicated education. Many want the crops out, plowing up the ground. They want the rain without the thunder and lightning. They want the ocean more of its many waters. This struggle may be a moral one. It may be a political one, but it must be a struggle. Power concedes nothing without a demand. It never did. It never. All that is in one speech by this one black man who fought his way out of slavery and became a beacon of light to us. So we need to study that. That's more than Thomas Jefferson can deliver. That's more than George Washington, Dr. Cherry Tree can deliver. That's more than dishonest aid with the Emancipation Proclamation can deliver. We are old people. Let's get into Harriet Tubman, who got the African Holy Ghost. And once she frees herself, she becomes a great spirit and a great monophore. But that wasn't enough for her. She had a divine mission to go further. And so she went back again and again and again and again and again, not by herself. She didn't go with a college degree. She didn't go with somebody else lesson in her heart. She went with a mission. She had every fiber of her body. And she was armed. She was armed with an African mind that is an indigenous mind, a mother love and mother consciousness. She was a role model. She was a mind model. She was a spirit model. And then she was packing her pistol. Yes. And she said, freedom or death.
Next caller. Welcome to the community cop. Where you calling from? You're there. You're there.
Hello. Hey, how you doing, Professor Jeffries?
Peace, brother. What's up?
Yeah, okay. I'm enjoying you and Brother Mike.
We're having a good time.
Listen, I wanted to ask you about
where you calling from?
Dr. Gates on blacks in Latin America. Could you comment on that, please?
No, I refuse to comment, brother. My comment on Gates is his whole life, not just a piece of him. Gates' life parallels mine. So call me after college, 212-650-8651, and I'll give you a whole understanding of Henry Louis Gates. I call him Skip the Truth Gates, but that's just my way of dealing with the brother. But he's a product of the American society. And unfortunately, the African experience he had didn't take in the right way. So he's gone through change, transformation, and rebirth. But he's come out on the white side. He himself has declared that he has more white than blackness. So I'm going to send him a letter that, Skip, you and I are friends, and we've been associated with each other over a period of time. And said you developed Black Studies at Harvard, I had developed it at City College, and I'm going to give you this letter. So you can move out of the black race and you can join white folks, and we'll give you Godspeed. And so call me 212-650-8651, and I'll give you a perspective on the process that produced the Henry Louis Skip the Truth Gates, and not just a show that he did or a book that he published.
Well, I think Sergeant Crowley from Boston would have something to say about him joining the white race. Next caller, welcome to the community cop. Next caller. Where you calling from?
Yes, hello. This is Omar calling from the village of Harlem. How are you, brothers? And Dr. Jeffries, we love you to life. I could never say I love you to death. I love you to life.
Thank you. I like that.
I love you to life. And this is what I tell my grandchildren. Never say I love you to death, because that's too final. We love you to life. Okay, the bottom line is there was a very disturbing book that came out about our black shining prince last month. The late Dr. Marable wrote a book, and I've read part of it, and I found it very disturbing, so I had to put it down. I want you to give me a comment on that. Second of all, I'm going to be going up there also because my family's at the Trump Cemetery. I just lost a brother, and he's laid to rest. My mother and father is a stone's throw from where Brother Malcolm and Sister Betty is. Had Malcolm and Dr. Martin Luther King lived, I want you to look through your crystal ball and tell us, what would you think his concept of what President Obama is doing, and what would you think would be, because I'm watching this PBS series about the Freedom Riders, and as Brother Mike knows, I was in the Freedom Riders in my youth. What do you think their concept would be of our president and where we're going now here in the 21st century? I'll hang out and listen to your response. And as usual, I love you, and there's nothing you can do about it.
We love you too, brother.
I love the concept of love you to life. That's the story of my life. The family and the people around me have loved me to life, and that's why I'm still here. But Brother Omar is true to his calling. Every time he calls in, he got a series of questions that will take 2 days to answer. But they're really good. Now, what was the first one?
He asked you what book?
He asked you
about the book, and asked you what would Malcolm and Dr. King think of President Obama?
The book by Malcolm. Dr. Manning Marable was a scholar. He found a base at Columbia University. I know a lot about Columbia. I got 2 degrees from Columbia, master's and PhD. And I was offered a job at Columbia. I chose the hill opposite Columbia that was in Harlem. I chose to be with the people. That's why I'm a community professor. I didn't have to see everything. That was a choice that I made. I knew what Columbia was because I had been there for 10 years, getting a master's and a PhD. So I'm not surprised that Manny Malcolm has given forth his ideas, which is his right and his privilege, to this whole question of intellectual struggle, intellectual warfare. And that's his take on it. Now, everybody else, wake up. Start reading yourself. Start rereading your autobiography. Anticipate the good work that's going to come out by Les Payne. He's been working on something for 20 years. Right. Get other works that are already there. Remember Zach Condor gave me this book when he spoke in the building. Conspiracy, Unveiling the Assassination of Malcolm X. He did this in the early 90s, and I helped him with some advice on this, and he showed me appreciation and lesson. So the book will serve its purpose. It's controversial. Now we got to think. We got to rethink El Hajj Malik Al-Shabazz. We have to think the relationship of Betty and him. We have to think the raising children as Betty did after he left her in the difficult. We have to think the conflict within the nation of Islam. All those things will allow us to rethink these instances and give us greater understanding. And we can appreciate, because you got to put conspiracy in there. You can't just see Malcolm being killed and you don't see several levels of conspiracy actually taking place. You don't see King years later, 3 years later or so, being killed without seeing levels of conspiracy in there. So nothing new comes out of Manny Marable's book for a new interpretation, and that gives us our right to go through our interpretation, change, transformation, and rebirth. No matter what misinterpretations have been made of Malcolm in this work, if Malcolm was not the criminal he said he was, and he overplayed it, and bumped it up a little, okay. Malcolm may have had different sexual experiences all of us have. If all that is true about Malcolm, then it's even greater than we thought, because he overcame much more than we could have imagined. Family there, but family gone. Mother there, but mother gone. Being raised with your brothers and sisters, a shattered type of relationship. Being on the streets, Detroit, where all those periods of his life that he went through, any one of them would have devastated just a normal one of us forever. Right. But he went through all of it, and out of it he came with this black shining prince. Yes, sir. And has left us this legacy that we can. Millions of us are inside. This beautiful sister, Michelle Alexander, has come up with this book. The new Jim Crow, the new prison system, which is the virtual new slavery. So now we're going from 2 to 3 to 4 to 5 million of us inside. Malcolm's fight to renew himself and become a giant should be an inspiration to millions on the inside. Right. So now we need to take Malcolm's transformation and new material needs to come out. So Manny Marable should inspire more serious people to come out and testify that I was in jail and I was down under and I was doing all sorts of things. But Malcolm's spirit, the words, the thought, the what he did inspired. There are hundreds of thousands of people who could write that testimony. There are hundreds of thousands of others of us who are going through the school system to become part of the white system, who when Malcolm said, no, there may be another road, we changed our course. So I'm saying, it's a controversial book, but it's a blessing. You take your blessings. They come in all kinds of disguises. Now we can renew Malcolm. We can link him to the African continent, to Nkrumah, to Zico in Nigeria, to Gamal Nasser in Egypt, to Sekou Touré in Guinea. We can bring back Sekou Touré and Malcolm Biggie did all of it. No black person on earth had 14 months of his last period of his life. That should be studied again. Books and testimonies should be made about that. So you take the challenge that was put before you by Manny Marable and the reinvention of Malcolm X, and let's reinvent Malcolm, each one of us, for even greater strength and empowerment. Yes, sir. Next call. Welcome to Community Cap. Where you calling from?
I'm calling from Manhattan Hotel.
Brother.
Much love to you, Brother Jeffries, and you, Brother Mike. Me and my father, we love you very much. We appreciate your good teaching. And you just said something that really stuck to me when you mentioned Mr. Gates. He's just like, I keep telling people, Mr. Gates is just like Mr. Obama. Even though they have black skin like ours, they are is that of the Western Europeans. And that's why he's so quick. That's why he's so quick to go out and try to kill President Gaddafi. And and I say that's how they are. And you have a blessing, brother Jeffries and brother Mike.
Thank you, brother. Next caller.
Before the next call comes, what we're suffering from greatly is what I call paralysis of analysis. We get heated over particular instances, such as a book on Malcolm, or the death of Bin Laden with the President Obama in the middle of it. And then we get the paralysis of analysis, and we fail to understand that that president in the United States, and every president in the United States, is dealing with layers of systems. There's no one man, white or black, pink or blue, no woman who could come into that network of complexities of systems and change it. If he came in with a people's agenda, movement in the streets, movement in our communities, movement in linking up our peoples, then he could have some leverage. He can't come in as one man trained at Columbia, trained at Harvard, no matter how brilliant he was, no matter how beautiful his wife, no matter how wonderful the children. One man can't come in to deal with the complexity of systems. We as African peoples have to understand that it takes a system to deal with the system. We need to form our African system. Start right now, linking them up and making them real, coming out with an African agenda. He didn't come into the White House with an African agenda. You don't expect him to come into the White House with a national agenda. That's something that I would be able to do. Automatics, attorney automatics, Ronald Plummer, all these others might come in with our agendas, but he never came in and said he's going to be a black nationalist president. And so he's formed to do what he's doing. He comes out of the womb of an African woman, with the seed of an African from his father, but he comes out of a white woman who instilled in him to be the best that you can. She couldn't have instilled any Africanness in him. He was raised by grandparents that were in Hawaii after the Indonesian experience. They couldn't put Africanness in him. And so Michelle Obama gets him at a grown age. She can't put Africanness in him, so that he has been formed to do what he is doing. And so it's an example for all of us going to these colleges now. We've been formed to do what the system wants us to do. And until we look at it and analyze it and say, wait a minute, I got to do something else. I got to take a break. I'm going to become a community professor and not a Columbia University chair. And so I'm saying that Obama speaks to what is happening to the millions of us that are getting this high-powered education, our children, our nieces, our nephews, our young generations coming up, and they are following the same pattern that was laid out for Obama. We don't have an African formation for any of them that's serious, that's sustained, that's going to be long-lasting. That's the job that we have to do. Africans are born Africans, but they have to be formed to be in leadership with an African consciousness, an African values, African. So we don't have that. That's the role that we have to be about now. And it's not going to happen from the public school system. It's not going to happen from the university. It's going to happen in the homes. It's going to happen in the community. That's why I like to claim I'm the community professor. And not the
Next caller, welcome to the community camp. Next caller, where you calling from?
Yeah, I'm calling from Brooklyn.
All right.
That's my name is Jeffries. I'm so sorry I want to say something about my beloved Dr. Ben and Dr. Van Serlim. I know Dr. Van Serlim are passed away, but before the show, I want you to say something about them for people who don't know.
Dr. Ben and Dr. Ben.
Well, a good question, let's let me say a word about President Obama. President Obama is doing what the system that formed him wants him to do. And if we wanted him to do something else, there should have been another formation in place for him. And so we need to understand that, Albert. But Dr. Ben is doing fine. Dr. Ben has reached an unusual plateau. He's 93 years old. And he still has his mind, not as sharp as it was. He still has his concept. He even drives a little vehicle. He doesn't have a license, but he drives a little vehicle.
Very fast.
And he's been coming up the aisle of the church. He's moving. And don't have a license. But anyway, Dr. Ben is a blessing. Dr. Clark is a blessing. And to have him still alive is Dr. Alvin Van Sertima. Dr. Alvin Van Sertima I have a picture on my desk of Ivan Van Cetera with Brother Bill Jones and Dr. Ben when we had the conference at City College in 1986. Ivan was an important part of the family. He was that younger generation who went through the same process of shattered consciousness and fractured identity. He gave some of his greatest emotional speeches on the fact that some of his family identified white. He made the decision to identify African. And so he went through change, transformation, and rebirth. He contributed a body of knowledge that the likes of which very few of us have contributed. He published my works and stuff constantly. He put the review of Diop's book, and he published it 3 or 4 times. So Ivan, you give the greatest respect to these brothers, but you have to study them, not at a period of time, not a book they did, not a trip that they had, but their whole life of change, transformation, and rebirth into an African consciousness.
Next caller, welcome to Community Cap. Where you calling from?
Hello?
Yes.
Hello?
Yes, sister.
From Harlem.
Go, sister.
Yes, I'm calling from Harlem. I'd like to ask Mr. Jeffries, what about the Africans who don't want to have nothing to do with Black Americans? He's about the sweetest man talking, or you could feel the love pouring right out of him. But he's Black American.
Okay, let him answer the question, sister.
No nothing to do with you. Talk about that.
But sister, say it again slowly.
No, she said that some Africans don't want anything to do with it. You speaking highly about Africa, but she said some Africans don't want anything to do with us as African Americans.
What's new? What's new? Some African Americans don't want to have nothing to do with African Americans. Some so-called West Indians don't want to have anything to do with African Americans. Some West Indians who speak Spanish don't want to have anything to do with the West Indians that speak French, that speak English. That's
Close the comments.
We have to see ourselves as African people damaged, but African peoples on the path of change, transformation, and rebirth. And these confusions of identity and consciousness have been planted in us. We've been born to win, but we're programmed to lose. And we've got to get our own African program.
Thank you very much, Dr. Jeffries, and thank you for inspiring me to go to Africa with you.
Yes.
Last year we went to Ghana together. Thank you to Sister Veronica Kidd, Nat Wood, Sister Lulu, Sheila Berry, and everybody that helped in the production staff. And thank Dr. Jeffrey so much for taking time out of a busy day. He's going to be at home tonight. Thank you so much. And of course, Reed State Ultimate. Reed State Ultimate.
I'll be at the City College tonight for a tribute to Brother Bill Jones, sending his spirit off into the ancestral world at 6:30 or so. We'll be at 0201 in the Knapp building. And then the burial, Malcolm X and Billy's gravesite will be there Thursday. Buses leave from the state office building at 9:30, be on time, and then after a 40-minute ride, ceremony, and then we come back to home. All right. That's Thursday, May the 19th. There may be trouble ahead, but while the moonlight